Hi guys, Tarke here, and I've prepared some notes on the upcoming synthesis changes and on the 3.6.2 patch notes in regards to the Betrayal Changes. But before we get into that boring stuff, there's something very important that I need to talk about, and that is Celestial Soulrend Cat version review. My thoughts, since people have been asking what do I think, and did I have to pay for it. Tarke gave me a free one. Tarke very kindly reached out to Grinding Gear Games, gifted them a free idea, and in return they gifted Tarke, aka me, a free MTX. It looks cool. It looks really cool. I do have like one minor quibble. I think it looks cool the way that it leaves these like celestial effects on enemies. I really like that. I do feel like it's missing a sound animation though. I said make it meow constantly. That was kind of a joke. If it meowed constantly, it'd be really irritating on the ears. But I kind of feel like there should be some noise. If not a meow, just like a actual, like just some kind of casting noise. If you compare it to the default Soulrend, it kind of has this like background noise to it when it hits a wall. It's got a collision noise. Whereas this is just like a silent version. Some people like silent versions, but it just doesn't really do anything. One thing I do really like though is when it makes unit collision, the cats spin around. And sometimes they shoot up in the air, sometimes they do a little spin. That's just a nice little touch, which I appreciate. So that's cool. I just wish there was a slight noise. And I'll crank up the sound effects to full. There's a very slight thing if you listen to it on full, but no one listens to it on full. So they basically just need to rebalance that slightly. But I would rather sound effects are too quiet than too loud, because otherwise you have the magma ore problem and it's deafening. But yeah, I would say this is a 9.5 out of 10 MTX. Would buy again, even though I didn't buy it. So that's the important stuff out of the way. Let's get into the less important things, aka the synthesis changes. So what do we think about the upcoming synthesis changes? I've made a bunch of notes here. So they're changing monster density. This is really big. So inside the nodes itself, there was something weird going on, where the more density you had, it wasn't necessarily a good thing. So you're getting larger packs, but less of them. Really bizarre. But they've evened it all out. They've cleaned it all up. There are 3 different types. There are the small zones, medium zones, and then the large zones. The small zones could only spawn before level 50. The smaller zones after the change will have slightly less monsters, but that doesn't matter because you're never going to see those in maps. Medium sized are apparently roughly the same, and the large ones are much better. So this is basically a buff. For anyone mapping, this is a buff. This is a good thing. Also, breaches and abysses can now spawn in non-decaying nexus memories. So if they've got 1 charge, they can't spawn. But if they have 2 to 3 charges, they can spawn. So this is, again, just like more stuff. Generally, it's good to have more stuff. Pretty good. Distant memories. So distant memories, that's just the name of the reward nodes. Again, they've had a global buff. So all distant memories, all reward nodes are better now. They give more and better items, so that's generally good. But they also have a TP, so once you've hit the reward chest at the end, you can teleport back to the start. And also what's nice about that is when you've got a big open layout, what you can do is you can run straight to the reward, hit the reward, a TP will then spawn to the bridge, and that means that you can run around as much as you want killing mobs. And if the zone completely closes up on you, you go back to the bridge, but you can still TP back to that reward bit. So it means that not only do the reward nodes have higher quality and quantity of loot, it means that you can run them fuller, meaning that you're not worried about missing out on rewards at all. And also, you can bounce around freely like how we could at the start of the league. So this is a massive buff to that. Massive, massive buff. We can also move memories. So what we can do now is, let's say I wanted to progress further this way, but I don't have the pieces currently. I can pick up anything I've already got placed. Just pick it up and plonk it down somewhere else. This is absolutely huge. And I've prepared a small video demonstration of how this will look in practice. So basically, now what you can do is, with just a few pieces pre-placed, you can now fully move around the memory nexus. This is going to be like ridiculously strong for not only being able to like fully buff certain nodes, but then having complete control of where you want to go. So you should never really feel like trapped or locked down. You should never feel blocked off, because if something ever spawns in the wrong place, just pick up your piece, put it somewhere else. Overall, 10 out of 10, massive buff. Super into that one. Memory modifiers. So that is the rewards here. So before, the way they would work is, let's say this one, right? When I procced this, it would travel and give memory modifiers to everything connected to it, up to a limit. Now what will happen is, you get the buff, you see what the buff is, and you choose what you place it on. And it will hit that and all adjacent ones. So I run this, it says, you know, it contains 20% more Celestial, you know, Cat Soulrend. I'd be like, ooh, where do I want to put the Cat Soulrend, for example? Drew a little demonstration here. Bump. Let's say I want to put it on this one. So this zone will get it. This zone will get the buff. And then all adjacent will get the buff. So everything around it will get the buff. And these aren't adjacent, so they won't get it. And since we can move the zones around as much as we want, it means you should always basically be able to buff a maximum of 5, which is the zone you put it on, and then the 4 adjacent zones. So that's very big. They've also made the reward substantially more powerful, and they've put a limit of 5. So what you would do is, you would stack up 5 memory mods on 5 zones, and you're good to go. And then, because there's now a cap of 5, it means that you're going to be running them much sooner, because there's no reason to stack crazy amounts. So yeah, you get to like super juice up 5 tiles at once now. And again, since we can move them around fully, you can stack them all up around the memory nexus, meaning you don't need to run a super long way to get to them, which means that if for whatever reason you fail a run, because you failed a decaying zone, or you disconnect, or whatever reason, it's much less punishing now. Before, if you had a super long path and something went wrong and you bricked your path halfway through, you were completely screwed. Since we're now running much shorter reward paths, and also we can move the reward paths freely, there's really very little failure state now. Obviously, if you fail a zone, that's missing out on like an area, but it's way less punishing than it was before. Way, way less punishing. So that's very big buff. Fractured items. They've buffed the drop rate of fractured items, and they can now drop in all memories, and they'll drop in larger amounts from the reward chests. Before, they could only drop from decaying, so ones with only 1 use left. They'll still drop in maps as per usual, but before, if you had 2-3 charges, they wouldn't drop at all there. So there'll be a lot more fractured items dropping. So that means that if you are trying to synthesize certain things, if you're trying to craft, there is potentially a much larger supply. This is dependent on people picking them up. So if people are picking them up, great. If people aren't picking them up, there should generally be much higher supply there, and hopefully more people will learn what isn't worth collecting. Obviously, market prices will rebalance around this. So you might want to maybe lower your current prices if you've got a bunch saved up now, to kind of like empty out your stock before the market gets flooded. Memory mods. So high level memories. This is talking about what you get during maps. The high level, the memory you run in a map. the better like quant it will have. So here you can see the actual memories you get have like item rarity, quantity, and pack size rolls. So if you're running tier 16s, like area level 83s and stuff like that, they should have much higher quant, rarity, and pack size than, you know, tier 1 maps. So basically, the higher tier maps you're running, the better rewards you're going to get. This is obviously good. People want to be running the high tier content, not, you know, chain resetting quarry, for example. Also, on that note, the memory fragments that you're getting, they're now much more biased towards 3 and 4 bridges. So that would be the 4-way corners and the 3-way splits like this. So you'll see a lot more 4-way and 3-way splits and a much less 2 pieces, be it corners or straight lines. Apparently, there's now equal weighting between straight and corner pieces for 2 bridges. I didn't know if they were more favored to corners before or straights before, but it's now equally weighted, so that's something, I guess. So far, all very positive changes. The next 2 changes, these I'm kind of against, to be honest. So, boss encounters. So I have one here, for example. All of the mods you see here, these weren't actually affecting the boss encounter. So if you haven't run a boss yet, basically the way it works is it's a full zone. You run the full zone, and at the center of the zone are portals into the boss room. Kind of like how Elder Guardians and Elder doesn't take the map mods, it was the same thing. Now, however, with the change, they will take on the map mods. So bosses will be much, much harder now, and it doesn't seem like they're doing anything to buff the rewards. So bosses are just going to be substantially harder, and if you've ever tried doing like deep delve bosses, you know, you just see that one all, which is just like super rippy, you're going to see a lot of that now. So there's just going to be some bosses you just don't want to touch. And that's kind of... Some people think this is good, because some of the bosses were super easy, but the big boss, like the Cortex boss, was kind of sweepy for some. And you also need to keep in mind that the boss is dictated by the area level you're running. So, you know, if you're going to be running more tier 16s now, you're going to be having more higher level base bosses, so bosses will be harder across the board anyway. The final boss was already quite scary, and now they've just got like all these extra mods on them. Yeah, don't really know how I feel about that. Like, for example, this monsters 100% increased area of effect. Bosses get really stupid once they start getting like increased area and onslaught, and yeah, I don't really know how I feel about that. So another thing to keep in mind with the bosses is the bosses are very common this league, but they don't have guaranteed like unique drop rates. Basically, the consensus that GGG has been hearing for a while is we'd rather see more bosses with less drops, so it's like balanced, but we actually see them, than having super rare bosses that you may go the entire league without seeing. So this league, the bosses are very, very common, but they haven't got the best drop rates. So now if the bosses are very common, but like super, super challenging, and they regularly don't drop stuff, that just might feel pretty bad. Also on that point, they've changed the way that the reward nodes actually generate. This will seem like a good thing to many, but this is also a significant nerf to boss spawning. So now the way that the reward nodes generate is when you get a memory frag, not when you place a memory. So before, what was happening was when you were placing memories, these rewards could spawn and like break your path. Now the rewards will generate based on when you actually gain them in a map, right? So it's like you run the map, you gain a memory, a reward will spawn somewhere. Now, before, what you could do is, and Grimro has a video on this, you could purposely set up your board in such a way that you could force boss tiles to spawn, and you can no longer do that. That's like gonzo now. So since they've removed like forced boss spawning and made bosses significantly harder, this is quite a big hit to that. So if you're looking for the certain boss rings, like the Circle of Anguish and all that kind of stuff, maybe farm that now before the change goes through, because it will be much harder after this. And now let's get into the Betrayal Changes. There's just a few things in here. I'm sort of for them and I'm sort of against them. So I made a video talking about Betrayal, saying how Betrayal needed changes very early into the league. So obviously I'm super happy by Betrayal Changes. Sort of. They've killed quarry farming. Quarry farming was pretty boring gameplay. I'm glad it's not the best way to engage the mechanic. Now, anything pre-maps, there'll only be 1 betrayal encounter rather than up to 3. You can still, like, power farm betrayal now. What you're going to do is want to take a map like City Square, a very short, very linear map that you can run very quickly, and just speed clear the fuck out of them. And now what you're going to be doing is, rather than, like, chain resetting something like Quarry, you're just going to be chain resetting very linear maps. Yeah, I don't know. It's something. I'm not sure if it's the solution, but it's a solution. And they've significantly boosted the intelligence, the actual, like, rewards you get when you interrogate members. So, I've done a full mastermind board, so my board's completely reset. There's also weird stuff that your board gets screwed when your mastermind resets, so that's a whole other topic. Now, super boosting intelligence isn't necessarily a good thing. It's a good band-aid fix, and I'm glad they did it, but it needs more attention long-term. So the reason why this needs more attention long-term, if you're getting way more intelligence, that means that you have less interactions per event, right? So before, let's say that you had to do 10 imprisonments before you got a safe house. You know, that meant you had to, like, interact with the board 10 times. Now it's like interact with it 5 times. Like, well, why does that matter? So the way that you get the really good rewards is it's like, I'm going to make this guy rank 3. I'm going to manipulate him so he's in charge of this, and I'm going to get rid of that guy. By just making it the safe houses way quicker, you're limiting your interactions. So it's kind of like, you're going to be getting more safe houses, and you're going to be getting more masterminds, but you're going to have less ability to interact with the mechanic. So it's technically, like, making the mechanic, like, less controllable. So it kind of reminds me quite a lot of the, like, Betrayal Changes, where it's kind of like, it's a slight dumbing down of the system, right? You're going to be getting your rewards much more reliably now. However, you're having less room for strategy, so to speak. So it's a good short-term fix, but I don't think it's the perfect long-term fix. And on that note, if you leave safe houses up, like let's say you have a safe house ready to run, and you don't run it because you want to manipulate the board more, you actually get less spawns from Jun, because, like, the Jun encounters will stop spawning if you have a safe house up. So basically, it's a massive push towards, like, mastermind loot, and a nerf to specific safe house loot. The problem is, mastermind loot becomes less valuable the more people running it. So it's kind of like this weird thing where mastermind loot was very, very profitable before this change happened, because there was very limited access to the items. However, the more access you have to mastermind, the less profitable mastermind is. So it's a really weird one, that. So I don't really know how I feel about it. Also, they're doing a nerf to intervention, which is a very, very band-aid fix, which is a bit dumb, but I get why they did it. So basically, when intervention spawns, now that's the guys who, like, come to assassinate you. When they spawn in, they do reduced damage for a short duration. Now, some people have, like, game-breaking lag. Some people don't have it. I haven't had it all league, so it hasn't really affected me. Some people, it's been fixed. Some people, it's actually gotten worse in the last league. So by nerfing their damage when they spawn in, for the people with lag, it means they're less likely to like, just die to a disconnect, right? But for the people who weren't lagging, they've just, like, kind of neutered the mechanic, because if you've got a good enough build, you just one-shot them really quickly, so you just one-shot them before they do any damage, and then if you just keep nerfing them, then they're not scary, so then what's the point of them? So yeah, it's all kind of, The Betrayal stuff is good short-term. I don't think it's the perfect long-term solution. In terms of the actual, like, core synthesis changes, though, the synthesis changes are looking incredibly promising. Like, super, super promising. So if you were kind of, like, not into the whole memory nexus thing, wait until the new patch comes out, The synthesis changes are already live, but the syndicate changes are already live. The synthesis changes won't be out till later in the week. Also, Bex made a comment that the fossil and essence crafting for fractured items will also be coming up soon, which is very good. So overall, I'm very happy, and looking forward to seeing some new Memory Nexus stuff. I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.